YouTube says we're live. Awesome. We'll wait and give just a second to see if the app crashes on a Friday night. And it looks like for the first time in a couple of weeks, knock on wood, that it's not going to go crash. Jordan, welcome. We'll give this just 2 or 3 minutes. I want to touch on this topic because I think it's going to be shocking. I think it's going to be shocking to most drivers. But I think it'll be shocking in a good way. Ice water tonight. Hey, I want to share with you guys while we're waiting for a few people to come in. You guys see this? This is when the Broncos were in the AFC Championship, 2006. That's how old this cup is. I've got a couple of these. Every time I use one of these cups, it reminds me of that game. I was there at that game, Mile High. Here's what I remember about this game. We won the game. After the game, Terrell Davis, who was the running back for the Broncos, his grandma was seated just a few seats down from us. After the game was over, there were 1 million of these cups in all the cup holders around the stadium. And his grandma was so proud of him. She had these, little old lady, right? She had cups stacked as tall as she could, like multiple rows in both arms. I guarantee you she still probably has 1,000 of those. And it's comical, but it was also really cute because she was clearly so proud of him. Every time I see that cup, there you go. I thought I'd share that with you guys. I want to talk tonight on this topic. Let me pull up the article. What did I do with it? So the article was on, where did I see it? Man, FreightWaves, I believe is where it was. FreightWaves. Yes, that's where it was at. And it's down a few articles, but I thought it was really intriguing. I thought it would be, I'm really interested to hear what you guys have to say about this. And this is talking about shippers. So let me kind of fill you in really quickly. There was a couple of gentlemen having a conversation about this. This information comes from, that I'm going to be sharing with you guys, comes from a gentleman named Kevin Perry. He's a principal at the Domestic Transportation Consultant. It goes on to say that Perry has an impressive resume. Just trust me when I say Perry has a very impressive resume, right? A lot of experience with some very large companies in our space, okay? Here's where it kind of digs in. And let me just read a couple of things to you. It says, Perry begins by listing, and the whole point of this is he's talking about how shippers can be better and what carriers expect from shippers. Okay, we don't often see or have these conversations, and I think it's really valuable. And so I want to read some of this with you or for you. Kevin Perry begins by listing the best practices that he recommends to shippers who are seeking to become a shipper of choice, right? Kind of a preferred shipper for carriers. Let's see. He goes on to say, you can't just try to beat up the carriers on price, right? You just can't do that anymore. He goes on to say, when you're talking about being a shipper of choice, you must take the time to speak with carriers to find out exactly what that means. Providing accurate volume forecasts is critical. Tendering loads 2 to 3 days ahead of time, critical. Providing drop and hook access 24/7, critical. Providing amenities for drivers, such as secure parking, critical. He goes on to say, to the extent that you can, balance your load tenders, not just through the week, but also through the month, right? He goes on to say that shippers hold carriers accountable to very high levels of load acceptance percentages. And what he means by that, guys, is so if you sign up with a direct customer, and I want to talk about more of that after I read this article, right? They're going to issue you a tender. For those that don't know what having that direct relationship is like with a direct shipper, when you sort of have those conversations, you agree to some contractual terms, that shipper is going to want you to take a certain number of loads per week or per month. They're going to do that via a tender. They're going to send you an email for a load tender. You have two choices. You can either accept it It's typically going to be on a predetermined rate that you've already negotiated, or you reject it, okay? So that's what he's talking about when he says shippers are holding carriers to a high level of load acceptance percentages. He goes on to say that shippers need to make sure that their own house is in order, okay? He says speeding up the carrier receivables is important. Trying to get 30 days or better terms to pay is another critical component, okay? When he talks about them having their own house in order, right, I think we all sort of see the results of that when they're not, whether they are or aren't in order. For example, we see it probably most notably, and I've said this a lot, right? I feel like shippers and receivers were the least prepared entity in the supply chain, right? Raise your hand if you've heard me say that many times before. And that's what Kevin is speaking about here, is they need to have their own house in order, because just small things can make a world of difference to a carrier. He goes on to say that another issue that came up is the core carrier philosophy, where shippers try to reduce the number of relationships they have by trying to establish a small group of carriers that handle all of their transportation needs. He goes on to say this: when you limit your options, you are usually overpaying. He said he sees examples of people building depth throughout their routing guides so that they can try to stay ahead on published rates without having to go to the spot market. So what does that mean to you guys, right? What does that mean to me, to you, to carriers, to owner-operators? If what worked for them in the past of having a small team of carriers that they can tap on the shoulder, again, we sort of talked about that relationship. Sometimes they matter, sometimes they don't. Sometimes you're being overpaid, or you're having to discount too much, you're being taken advantage of, right? He sort of addresses that in that sentence. But what that means to carriers or owner-operators is shippers are now trying to expand the number of carriers that they bring in to their market, right? In-house, right, to move their freight. So for all those individuals that all those emails and comments that I get are, man, I'm just a one-truck operation. Can I really provide any value to a shipper? Yes, right? Here's an industry expert that is consulting with shippers that is suggesting that they do exactly that, right? They begin to expand so that they're not having to overpay, so that maybe they can bring new carriers into the fold, right? So really interesting kind of perspective for what shippers are being guided to look at. So just a couple more comments. He goes on to say that shippers are also being forced to accept poor service. When he talks about those tender acceptance rates, just so you guys know, right, he goes on to say, hey, shippers are accustomed to seeing tender acceptance rates, meaning carriers accepting those load offers in the 90 percentile range. In today's environment, they're happy to be in the low 70s, right? That's sort of what they're not happy to be in the low 70s, but that's what they're seeing is acceptance rates being degraded down into the low 70s. They had some conversation whether or not on time is valuable and is that still realistic. And by on time, they're meaning 98.5 to 99%. And Kevin's answer was anything is still possible, right? What does that tell you as a carrier or an owner-operator? That tells you that due to a lot of the regulations, and they speak of that in this article, and a whole host of other things, on-time deliveries are not happening as frequent as these shippers would like. So when we talk about value, we talk about perceived value and real value, right? I've got videos on that. Go check them out. But at the highest level, for those that say, what kind of value can I sell? I'm in a commoditized industry, right? What does it really matter? There is a place, again, when we talk about simple things that you can add value of, hey, here's where I'm at on my clock or my 70 or today's run. I can certainly get this load there, barring some sort of, a mechanical issue, right? That's value to them because they're not experiencing the on-time deliveries that they once were. And so if you can sort of provide some assurance, right, or at least some comfort that you have the hours and the ability, the bandwidth to do that. You know that route, you know that area, you know that shipper, that receiver. Small things are adding tremendous value to these guys. All right, let me wrap this up. He sort of begins to wrap things up, and he says, Kevin Perry also says that carriers should not be shy about voicing their concerns about shippers' efficiency, especially regarding the operations of specific facilities. Sterling asked Perry whether carriers keep scorecards on shippers. And Perry said, absolutely, yes, they do. He said, but what I've seen is that carriers are reluctant to share those scorecards. I'd love to know kind of why he perceives that. But he kind of finishes up by saying, most shippers have thick skin and welcome the feedback and look for ways to improve. If there are certain facilities or vendors that are cost centers, they want to know. By cost centers, what he means is carriers or drivers looked at this as just a high cost of the load, right? We know that that particular location is slow to load or slow to unload, right? He's saying, hey, you want these shippers, these receivers, they tend to want to know this. And he kind of finishes up by saying this last sentence or so that I'll share. Shippers aren't stepping up their game across the board because they have too many egos and entrenched practices at play, all right? That has a direct result going back to them not being able to manage their cost centers because they can't improve what they can't measure. So if you guys or we aren't providing feedback, how do we expect that they're going to know that some bad things are happening? Guys, I'm going to tell you right now, when you're dealing with a lot of companies that aren't housed at that same facility, not a small company, a lot of times headquarters doesn't know what one facility is doing, right? And of course, if you're in charge of that facility, you don't want probably corporate to know that you're doing a really poor job, or you're having some efficiency issues. Guys, if you haven't downloaded, look, this is not paid to say this. If you have not downloaded the app Doc 411, that is exactly what Doc 411 is here to do. It is to make our lives better as carriers, to be able to know what facilities, what shippers, what receivers are doing an excellent job and what shippers and receivers are doing a poor job. If you have access to that information and you know that the average unload time at a shipper receiver is 6 or 8 hours, you definitely want to price that in when you're negotiating with a broker or a shipper as a direct customer, right? You absolutely want to know that. Doc 411 is the free app that allows you to have that information, right? Why more people aren't signing up and using that is beyond me, because that is a really great tool to help you identify kind of problem scenarios. I'm curious how many drivers are aware that shippers are being counseled and guided in that manner, because it's a good thing, right? Again, they are the least prepared component within the supply chain, and they genuinely want to be better, because when they don't perform well, again, carriers are going to charge them more, because again, those carriers that work with those locations more frequently, and he addresses that in that article, by the way. He says, hey, you know, they might get a good deal on a carrier once, right, one time, but the second time that carrier comes to take that load, you know, quite frankly, they're going to be charging more, right? And so again, it's a good opportunity. And just so you know, Doc 411 does share the information that is compiled with those shippers and receivers. And that's sort of part of their business plan of how they can be profitable, is they reach out to try to negotiate and help shippers consulting. So that's sort of how they're making their money. They're not really making it from the drivers, which is a good thing. Again, it's a free opportunity for us to get better. So I don't know. I think that's really good information. I know we as a carrier, also a shipper, also a receiver, you know, we sort of have control of our own destiny, as all shippers do, right? And we try to be really diligent. I mean, typically we're getting trucks unloaded in 30 or 45 minutes, right? But we can mandate that happens, and that's a good thing. But we don't, you know, we're not receiving a lot of outside shipments in. We try to handle all of that ourselves. But again, for a lot of the guys, a lot of the companies that are pushing outside freight, I think this is really good information. And I think it provides opportunities for small owner operators or small fleets to go and start reaching out to direct shippers, because again, They absolutely want your business. They need it. Rhino, Fluid Friday. Yeah, man, I'm trying to get hydrated. You bet. I've been on the phone all day. My voice is sort of already going. You guys can probably tell. Let me jump into a few of the questions. Let's see. Freight Waves went from nothing to the top in less than a year. I've seen a lot of their stuff, and I think it's really pretty strong data. And so I have become more and more intrigued by their data. That's probably a good way to say it. Heath saying, welcome back to Food Mooch. Tommy Reed says, hey Scott, last video really informative about knowing your cost, exactly what owner-operators need to know. Well, thanks. Stick around, you'll hear me say that a lot, Tommy. Let's see here, what else we have? Food Mooch says, check out Ricky Berwick on YouTube. Haven't heard of him. Let's see, NBA says, we have a shipper that will not pay attention until 6 hours, but fined $350 after 15 minutes late, right? Not a preferred shipper, no doubt. And that is absolutely, again, that's good to know. And if you knew that, if you had access to knowing that on Doc 411, you would definitely want to make sure that you have some kind of language in your contract for detention and that sort of thing, right? Just Chips, good evening. Reaching 7 figures by 2020 or 2012. Good for you, man. Let's see, one truck company, 10 to 20 trucks, that can take 10% of a single lane. Yeah, right, yes. I mean, look, at the end of the day, if you have a truck, you can provide value to a shipper, right? And so don't be shy about reaching out and trying to contact their shipping department. Rhino says, I had to make a donation today for a weight permit crossing 3 states. Woohoo. Oh man, that stinks. Tim and Hassel says, I don't understand every broker I deal with. Van loads after 2 hours charge $200 an hour. And with open top starting $100 1 hour after 1 hour. I'm in an industry, Hassel goes on to say that in his industry, if we don't make an appointment, we lose our place and bookings are 30 days out. That's pretty rough, right? Pretty rough. Rhino says, what are some broker rates out there? Who's doing what? Gosh, man, rates, capacity. So rates are starting to improve a little earlier than I kind of expected. Relative to years past. If you look at sort of the state of things and what's going on relative to the constriction in the industry, it's probably not too surprising. I think what I said a couple weeks back is you're typically looking at sort of that middle to end of August. We're certainly right at the middle of August and we're starting to see some improvement, so that's good. So for sure. Dashcan Sam says, Google Map Reviews is also useful. It is. That's not bad, right? But man, it would be really nice if we could consolidate as an industry and kind of using one primary function. But you're right, Google could have some good information. Josh says he just booked a load, $2,800 on 794 miles. Good for you. Howard's in here. Why take a pay cut going with dedicated? You shouldn't, right? In fact, that's not the point of going dedicated. Will says, I think I'm much more likely to reject an offer based on the receiver, more so than the shipper. Well, true. That's true. I don't know. Is it? I guess, I don't know. We've had some direct customers and we experienced problems on both sides. But because we dealt with the shipper more often, we were able to sort of work through some of those challenges. But again, it came from communication. Now, let me just hit pause really quick. And let me go back to that point in that article where the gentleman says, hey, be willing, feel free to kind of contact the shippers or the receivers to communicate where things are bad. Guys, can we all just agree that you tend to get more bees with honey, right? So if you're going to be critical, and let's be honest, drivers as a whole, not the most optimistic crowd, right? I don't think anybody's disagreeing with me there. But when you're going to provide feedback, be sure to say, hey, look, what? This is what good things happen, and sort of here's some of the negative things that happen, right? And oh, by the way, I wouldn't mind sharing some of the consequences or the financial consequences that those things had on you, but do so in a really professional manner. You're going to be far more apt to be taken serious, right, about that particular issue than if you just come in and start, swinging sledgehammers and screaming and cussing and all that sort of stuff. Joe Harding, listen, man, don't get smart with me, because I'll pull you up, or Howard's in here. We'll tell everybody exactly where you're parked, right? We can stalk you now, so fear the camera. Larry June says rates suck. When will we see a rise on them? You should start to see them a little bit toward the tail end of this week, and certainly next week, right? You should start to see some areas improving. Rates are 30% above last year, and last year they were up a lot, right? And not just the rates, right? But the freight volume is up significantly, right? And so when you sort of look at that supply and demand in our particular industry, you would probably suggest, most businessmen would probably suggest that rates should in fact be higher. As we talked about in the last couple of videos, where brokerages are experiencing 20x, 20 times, not 20%, 20 times their profit than they were at the end of Q2 last year. What that means is they have renegotiated very good rates, very strong rates. We out in this side of the market, the carriers, are not being as aggressive as the brokers were. So they out-hustled us, they outworked us. So are you experiencing that same type of growth? If not, you need to be more aggressive in doing your homework, doing your research, being familiar with where your lanes are at, and what you should be pricing for that lane. So there's that. Only Lonely says, Exec, any thoughts on why big name grocery warehouses are among the worst receivers? Any thoughts on that, on why they are? There's probably a lot of thoughts that I have, but I think if you were to narrow it down maybe to just maybe the easiest answer, I think the bigger you are, the bigger company you are, the harder it is and the slower things are to change. Right? There are pros and cons to being small companies. And some of those pros are being able to effect change or implement change quickly, right? So that you don't suffer financially. In big companies, it used to drive me nuts, man. I can remember we would schedule meetings to talk about another meeting that we're going to have. It was the most, I really struggled in that environment. I just despised it. I really did. But I think, again, I think sort of the easy answer is they're large, they're slow, they're a sloth, and it's difficult to implement change across, a large entity. Dash cam, all right, I'll go with it, dash cam. What's the difference between a driver and a puppy dog? Vic Reese, I have seen Jay's painting. I thought look, for those that don't know, right, Canel Swear, I asked him this morning. I said, hey, just secretly between you and I, you've never painted before? He's like, no, never really until, like 2 weeks ago. I think he's doing a really great job, and some of his paintings are really awesome. I did point out, though, just so you know, Vic, I did point out, because, I suffer from ADD, so does Canel, and I just kind of pointed out that he was missing a lot of the little Bob Ross birds, like here's a bird here, a bird there, just to make him feel like those paintings weren't complete, so. Harding says he left his ankle bracelet at a handicap stall. Donnie Law says he's a new subscriber here. Great info. Thank you for putting out. Well, thanks, Donnie. Thanks for the subscription. I appreciate it. Feel free to hit the bell. If you don't know what that is, it's the little bell-looking thing next to the subscribe button, and it'll give you notifications whenever I'm going live. I'm guessing the fact that you're here, you probably already know that. For those that are here and aren't subscribers, feel free to hit the subscribe button. Puppy dog smells better. I don't know if that was the answer, but that's funny. What you are missing that their margins are down per load. Brokers are up because of volume. They are up because of volume, no doubt. But if you don't think that they're not negotiating better rates, MBA, because of what they experienced last year at this time, I think that would be, I would think if a broker's not doing that, they're probably not going to be in business very long. So I don't think I'm missing that. But yes, the more volume that they're going to push, the more money they're going to make, right? But again, if you're experiencing 20 times your profit, you're probably achieving that level of profit over a 1-year window. I mean, let's just be honest. If you really want to think about the business or any business, not just trucking, but to achieve that type of growth, typically your revenue that you're bringing in has increased significantly, and that can come in the form of volume, but also the cost, meaning the rate that you're paying the carrier, is also going to be either flat relative to that delta of the revenue influx. So to achieve 20x volume, it's not just because of volume, right? I mean, look, weren't you the one that just said here a few minutes before that freight was up 30%, right? 30% of increase in volume does in no way does that increase 20 times the increase in profit, right? You're talking, one's a percentage and one's a multiple, so two very different things. What's the best lane right now? Man, I have no idea, right? Sort of depends on what are you hauling, flatbed, reefer, all that sort of stuff. So, you know, that's the difference, right? That's where you guys got to really dig into it is, you know, when you guys read a lot of this stuff and the rate per mile master nonsense, I mean, I can't tell you how many times I see where guys say just simply this: oh, I got a gazillion dollars on whatever, X hundred miles, right? Well, what was it? Was it flatbed? Was it reefer? Was it dry van? So, I don't know. No, Dashcan Sam, I think you're saying that's not the answer to the joke. What's the answer to the joke? Robert Kroom Sr. says, this goes some what I said to you in an email about detention. Golly, it does. What is this? Is this the third week that I've told you that I was going to address the video on detention and I still haven't? Um, 20x is misleading? How's that misleading? I mean, sure, I mean, you could look at the 20 times increase and you could make it misleading. I just don't know what's misleading about it, right? I mean, again, if you're going to increase your profitability 20 times in 1 year and you're going to do the same business, right? You haven't came out with a new product, you haven't came out with some new widget, you don't have some disruptive technology that's going to lead to a significant market share. I mean, what has to happen, right? Typically, your revenues are going to spike and your costs are going to be reduced. I mean, that's typically how that's achieved at any level. Now, to what degrees and all that sort of stuff, debatable, but I mean, that's what has to happen for any business to increase profitability by that much. Dashcam Sam's, after a while, the puppy quits whining. Yeah, that's true. Man. Just so you guys know how this works, when I'm looking at the screen, I can sort of, whenever it gets to a number of messages, and then it just jumps way down to the bottom. So if I miss some of you guys, I apologize for some of your comments. Sugarshine says she's got ADD as well. Ghost Rider, how's it going? I think Jake Cannell has been a closet painter for years, just didn't want to admit it. Man, he's doing really good stuff. It's really cool. I don't know if what he told me this morning is public yet, but he's going to do something really, really cool. And man, I really applaud him for what he's doing. He's helping out a really good charity, and so that's cool. I don't know if he's announced it, so I'll just kind of keep that under the lid. But hats off to him for doing that. He's a good guy. Captain Obvious, this is live. There you go. Does Bellaflora run any teams? We do not. Only the Lonely, we do not run any teams. Big Oz says $60 an hour for detention time here after 1 hour LTL, or 2 hours full truckload, owner op, power only. Drive van Chicago to Michigan, rates were good, says Tommy Reed. Chicago to Ohio, some really good rates. He says return runs back to Chicago are also very well. Yeah, I was looking at that about 3 weeks ago, and those particular lanes, because we had a truck in Ohio, I forget exactly where. We were looking at some of those triangles, and there were some really good short kind of day runs that paid very well. Trading MBA says 30% for current year over year. Report about the growth was for Q2. Yes, it was. And they discussed that margin was down. So margin was down. Your prediction, write it down, he says. All right. Profits for who? Profits for who are going to be down in Q3 because of the increased costs. But revenues are going to be down. Revenues for who? What are you talking about? 5 different locations, screenshot GPS on the arrival departure starting at 2 hours. You guys get $90 per hour. Will Burke, how's the lease option with Belfour going? So contracts are 99% done. We're working on some numbers for trucking and some banking stuff. So it's going well. Larry June says something has to give with the rates are down due to fuel rising, and fuel is certainly increasing significantly. Harding says Canal posted his about the charity thing on Instagram earlier. Very good. I didn't know that. Awesome. Brokers. You're talking about brokers. All right, so very good. So he did announce the St. Christopher's Fund. Cool. I think that's good for him. Howard's talking about fuel decreasing now the school's back in session. Probably so. We do tend to see kind of that dip right about now. Holidays are over, that kind of stuff. When do you think cost per mile will go away and drivers start getting paid hourly? When do I think cents per mile pay will go away and drivers start getting paid hourly? I did a video on that the other day. The thumbnail was a bar graph, and in that I was surprised to see the percentage of drivers that are currently being paid hourly. I don't know. I guess is the answer to your question, Johnny. I'm not sure. I guess I don't see it going away for a while, would be my opinion. You know, I think there are a lot of different industries or jobs within the industries that tend to want to have that pay for performance, right? Sales, trucking, that sort of stuff, right? So I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I would say that cents per mile is probably here for a while. Big Ross, PNR, any luck with those carrier APUs? No, they should be used as boat anchors and nothing less. They're horrible. Man, I would just never recommend getting a carrier APU. I wish Charlie was in here because he can always remind me of the name brand. It's one of Carrier's brands, but they're terrible, horrible. Single worst investment that we have made, hands down. Period. No questions asked. Dan says, if you get money for detention, are you willing to pay them when late for delivery? Right. It's always a fun argument when I see that posted on some of these Facebook forums, right? That and the other argument that I always chuckle at is when brokers quote a particular rate at, say, whatever, 20,000 pounds, and the driver pulls out of there with 43,000 pounds on the truck. And the argument is, hey, that cost me more in fuel, which it does. And the brokers say, yeah, but do you ever give us a refund or a discount whenever we tell you it's going to be 40,000, it's 20,000? It's always fun to watch how that goes. Comfort Pro. I don't know if that's what ours are. Maybe they are. Maybe they are. Let's see. Sugar Sense says tri-pack rules. I wish we would have gone with the tri-packs so much. I wish that for us. I wish that for our drivers. Man. Andrew Young says he's hourly running the Southwest, $23 an hour. He runs temp-controlled reefer. Good for you, man. Let's see. It does. Thermo King forever. I really screwed up with this carrier. Yeah, you too. Ours are terrible. I mean, just terrible. Pigtails in the house. He says they're Comfort Pro, so apparently that's what they are. They are Comfort Pro. The only thing I think that they're professional at is how much they suck. They have mastered the art of being a professional sucker at the APUs. If it's, yeah, I'll just leave that there. Johnny C says, I'm going to go watch your video about it. You're welcome, man. Worth every penny, Thermo King. Man, no doubt, no doubt. I told the story, right? I pulled into the yard. I was in the bus. Where I normally parked, we had a guy that was in a really nice Peterbilt 579 that we were renting. It had a Thermo King on it. And so they were over fishing, so I just jumped in the truck, moved it out of the way. And he had the APU on, which, you know, why do we have the APU on when the truck's sitting at the yard and nobody's in it? That was my first question. The second question was, holy crap, is it actually 33 degrees in here because I can see my breath? I literally could see my breath, and it was a Thermo King. And that's, if I'm gonna pay that much money for an APU, that is the experience. I wanna be able to hang meat and it not spoil in the truck if I'm gonna spend that much on an APU. Carrier, the Comfort Pro version, to say that they push cool air, I think is maybe even an understatement. So disappointed in that. Howard, did you tell me not to get those? You probably did. Man, worst decision I've ever made. Yeah, I know that Carrier does manufacture them, Greg. I just couldn't remember what the name of them. That's how bad it is. Like I refuse to put it into memory because it's that bad. Barb says it would be so helpful to get all drivers to rate the shipper and the receiver's experience. Right, Barb? Thank you for agreeing with that. It's not, usually people don't agree with me, they just want to argue, but thank you for that. Unfortunately, trying to get this group of folks to do anything together is like trying to herd cats. Thank you, Barb. I agree with you, agreeing with me on that. L. Will 2010 says, in my experience, it's almost never less weight. So that's a moot point. Hey, man, can I just, L. Will, can we hit timeout? Guys, hang on. Hang on a second. We're gonna have a quick, we're just gonna have a quick lesson. Can you guys see that? Moot point. The one below, mute, right? That's what you do when you wanna like mute your TV, this one. When it's a moot point, it's not a mute point, it's a moot. Can we just, there's my PSA for the day. And right after that, can I look, I'm just gonna, can we just start working on then and than? That's another one that is, and your, right? Your, Y-O-U-R, apostrophe R-E. Can we work on those? Man. All right, I'm done. That's my English lesson for the day. Let's see, what trucks are you going to lease op with? So we're kind of still digging around, probably Volvos, probably Freightliners, maybe Pete's, and probably Kenworths. But we're still digging into that. Let me jump way down. Rhino says he's down for rating, shipping, and receiving. Well, Doc 411, download it. There you go. We need to start to charge 10 cents a pound when the load is over the agreed. Listen, Robert, I mean, it is up to you, as we talked about yesterday, right? It's up to you, the individual driver or the carrier, right, if you will, to make sure that you have that information in your rate confirmations, right? And you can do that as simply as this, right? You can redline it. You can write it in, make sure it's legible. You can amend it on the computer, right? That sort of stuff, but absolutely. No, Allie, no, Alice, no. Let's get this straight. The only way to learn is not, she says the only way to learn is to make the mistakes and not repeat it. No. Listen, you can watch from somebody else's mistake. You don't have to like back into a door or a car or a building or like what, you don't have to do that to learn from it. You can watch somebody else do it and say that ended really poorly. I don't want to do that. Right? Can we just get that? I want to be clear with that. You don't have to do that. Please. NBA says, bought a Carrier in 2010. It was the bomb. Then he says he recommended it to other drivers in 2014. They came after you with pitchforks. Ours are terrible. I mean, they are, where's Charles Barkley? Are terrible. They are terrible. That is for sure. Man, well, listen, I'm not talking about like, cooling the whole truck, but I'm telling you what, that Thermo King did. Now, I don't know how long it'd been running, but it was cold in there. It wasn't cool, it was cold. Now, it was a little bit cloudy that day, so you're right. You may be right. I'm just telling you that the difference in that APU versus one of our other trucks that was sitting on the yard that was running, no comparison. Oh, Alex says, if I wanted you guys to read it, I should have wrote it backwards. Will says, sign up for Pete. Yes, we can confirm that you spelled it correctly. Congratulations. Thank you very much. We're going to be grammar Nazis. I am a grammar Nazi. Yes, I am. Howard will test that I am a grammar Nazi. Or buy a Carrier APU. Yeah, look, I guess that's an option too, right? But I can tell you after this experience, I wouldn't even give them a shot. Let's see, you don't need to drop a tree on the truck to know how to look up. No, you don't. The problem with that, I mean, that tree was like at eye level. I mean, it's not like they had to look up. Man. Joseph, you're fired. What do you say? Did I miss a comment? I don't see it. Don't write it backwards. This camera, his camera is mirror view. Well, let's see. Did it? I can't see. How does it look like on the sheet? Let me see. Hang on. Man, there's a lot. There's a delay. There's a delay. There's a big delay, actually. Let's see. You're allowed to be the grammar Nazi. You're the boss. It's just good. Oh, yeah, it does come in backwards, doesn't it? Hey, what if I just do that? I can't see that. I got writing on the other side. Yeah, it's backwards. Let's see. Miranda says, saw your live feed yesterday. You mentioned California as one of the bad states to run as a carrier out of. Which ones are the good ones? Arizona is a really, Arizona's a really good one, right? Arizona's a really good one. Maybe I could, I don't know, maybe I could try to find a list, like a ranking. Maybe that might be valuable to some. Let me see what I can do there. Education is learning without the direct experience because it's imparted from someone or something else. Was that my checking info? No. You guys know what I did today? True story. I haven't done this. I don't know how long. I don't remember the last time. I actually received an honest to God paper check that I had to go deposit. I don't remember the last time I did that. It was weird. I felt like I was driving around like with a fax machine in my front seat. It was just the check was just laying there. It was such a weird thing. Late to the party, Jim. It's all good. Arturo's World, what's up, man? We're just kind of wrapping this up. So that's it, just kind of in the Q&A part. Greg says, Bearing and races and a water pump for tomorrow night. Oh man, good for you. I know Howard was telling me that your truck was down. Good luck with getting all that squared away, man. And we look forward to seeing you here in a week or so. Best states are the ones with highest money per mile. Well, William, what we were talking about is sort of what they're. Some states are a lot more sort of carrier friendly. And by carrier friendly, what I mean is like when you are kind of incorporating that sort of thing. Versus others. So that was kind of where she was going there. No, it was not a sweepstakes clearinghouse check. Little Viking coach, how are you, man? How's it going? Joe Wiseman says he's here now that we can start, even though he's a little bit late. Well, you're just sort of coming in as we're kind of wrapping up. Sugar Sign, I still write checks. I'm old. I don't remember the last check I wrote. I did write one here within the past probably 2 months. And I can remember thinking then, and I actually looked at the ledger to see when the last check I wrote, and it was not even in 2018. I'm not a big check fan. I'm not. It's kind of crazy. Think about that, right? Think about this. Kids that are born today, they likely won't even know what cash is, much less a wallet. It's just kind of crazy, mind-boggling to think how changes are happening so quickly. Specifically in our industry, right? Technology has been lacking for so long. We're going to see a massive influx in technology in trucking over the next 10 years. ELDs is just probably the tip of the iceberg, what we're going to see. So let's see how it goes. Hugh says, what are you complaining about? I don't know. We're just kind of complaining about everything, really. A little bit of everything. So listen, it's Friday night. I'll let you guys go and do your thing. We'll go just another couple minutes. If anybody has questions, we're going to kill it. Hugh says, or you want to just talk to you. John says, I'm a new listener. Great job. Well, thanks, John. I appreciate it. Joe Wiseman, how can we be broke? We still got checks, right? No doubt, man. Blockchain is next. It's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. It's like getting new technology. Typically, it's like getting new technology that's a disruptive technology, which blockchain is. Typically, that first product to market is not the product. It's usually those frequent followers, those companies that take whatever that disruptive technology is, and then they come to market, they find it, they tweak it, and then within about 18 months, they bring something to market. And that's that frequent follower that usually has the product that tends to stick. Not always, but some. Joy Wells says, I'm 31. I've never used checks. Always a card. Yeah. So I take it you're a trucker. I am not a trucker, Hugh. Nope. That's why I smile more and I'm more optimistic, because I'm not a trucker. Eric says, I'm a fuel hauler looking to go owner op soon. Good for you. Little Viking says, Betamax, no clue what he's talking about. Just Chips, can you hurry up? Gotta go to the bathroom. Awesome. Hey, I'll leave you guys with just one thought. Consider Nike, the shoe company, right? Shoe company, absolutely, they play in a commoditized industry just like we do. But for a commoditized industry, they have a lot of technology that they put into their shoe, right? And if you look at how they market their shoe, for almost the entire time that Nike has been around, they've marketed their product by really doing one thing, and that's showing athletes or athletes in a sport excelling, right? But they add a tremendous amount of value. You never hear them talking about the technology that they have in their shoe. You never hear them talking about the technology that's in their soles or things of that nature, right? And it's a commoditized industry, right? What they do is they market value to those that are looking at that particular value. So we should do the same in our industry, right? Market the value that you have. If you have the opportunity to turn that, your technology, if you will, in this example, great, then use that to the broker. But man, don't miss the opportunity to push that value when you can, because other companies in other spaces that are just full of commodities, still tend to play in a really strong way and have high margins. All right, a couple more questions. Harding says, I think it's funny. You went to a bank to deposit a check the other day with my phone. Right, I know, but the bank here, I can't do that. Howard's shutting down Hugh. He didn't even ask a bad question. He says, what do? We have a trucking company, and some other company. Joe Wiseman, can I start the trucking industry as an owner operator with no prior experience? Can you? Yes. Should you? Probably not. Right. Unless you're kind of independently wealthy, you can burn through, in all seriousness, right? You can burn through a whole lot of cash really quickly, trying to learn the ropes. I mean, truthfully, the best way to go, and even a lot of the other YouTubers that are drivers will tell you, you should probably go run for a company for at least a couple of years. So, and I think that's good advice. It won't be autonomous trucks either. Yeah, there's been some changes in that. It'll be interesting to see how that goes. Tesla, man, with everything that that Musk has been saying. I mean, man, I don't know if you guys saw some of the stuff that he's been saying on Twitter. I saw an article with him tonight. I was reading it. There was a picture of him. I mean, he looked like he hadn't slept in about 3 months. You know, he's talking about taking it private. It's they're just getting killed right now. Really rough. Bill Hunter's here, man. We're literally just about to kill this. I'm worth $250 a mile, Dashcam Sam. You're probably worth more than that. Randy Spears, you're jumping in. We're just like jumping out. So that's what I got. Hey guys, it's Friday night. If you guys are making miles this weekend, stay safe. If you're home time, enjoy it. As always, my opinion from this side of the steering wheel. You guys take care. See ya.